Democratic Senator Jack Reed from Rhode Island. He joins me now. Senator, thanks for taking a few minutes. Well, look, I've seen this, and I'm sure you've seen this. There are a lot of Democrats out there, a lot of activists in your party who say, look, this seat on the Supreme Court, this vacancy, that should have been filled by Barack Obama. Republicans were wrong to stall all last year. That should have been Merrick Garland on that seat. And because Republicans did that, Democrats should turn around and do the exact same thing now, not even consider Donald Trump's nominee for this court spot. Do you agree with that?
Well, I think we consider the nominee, but we do it with great sort of trepidation in the sense of some of his positions taken on the circuit court have to be looked at closely. He seems to be favoring corporations over individuals. He doesn't seem to be someone who would allow regulations to properly be implemented. So there are serious questions about his tenure as a circuit judge, and that's what we have to look at, and it should be exhaustive.
You're raising specific concerns that would come up in the normal course of hearings. The other argument that's out there is this argument that, hey, Republicans crossed a line in not even holding hearings to have those discussions with Merrick Garland, and therefore Democrats need to follow that same thing. In this case, you would be rewarding that behavior if you consider this nomination. It sounds like you disagree on that point.
The critical line here is 60 votes. That's the standard that was applied to all of the nominees that President Obama sent. They succeeded because they had the skill after careful examination of their records, and they had the demonstrated judicial temperament to become justices of the United States Supreme Court. That's the line that we are committed to hold. That's the line we will hold. I think in that process, we'll get a chance to examine very closely the nominee and make a determination based upon his suitability for the Supreme Court, which is a much different court than a circuit court or a district court. It makes the laws of the land. So that's the line we intend to hold.
So, but when you talk about that line, when you talk about 60 votes, you're talking about a filibuster right there. And you heard Donald Trump himself saying, and certainly Republicans have made no secret about this, they have a majority in the Senate right now. They could just change those rules. They could invoke that nuclear option and bring that threshold down from 60 to 50. And they would say, hey, look, Democrats under Harry Reid a few years ago to get some Obama nominees through, they changed the rule. They changed that filibuster rule for executive branch nominations. So wouldn't Republicans just turn around and do that if you insisted on 60?
They could try to do that, but the reality is when it came to justices for the United States Supreme Court, we adhered to the 60-vote rule. We are consistent, and we maintain that consistency, and we think the Republicans should maintain that consistency. And there's another aspect to this, too. Anyone who goes on the court should not be viewed from the day one as a partisan nominee. They should be viewed as someone who has been able to attract bipartisan support. That's what happened with the latest addition to the Supreme Court, and consistently, and with very few exceptions, that's been the case throughout our history. So we have to be very, very clear about this 60 votes is something that we'll adhere to, and it's also something that's critical to the success of anyone that goes on the court.
Let me just ask you, maybe take a step back here, a broader question about how this process of confirming Supreme Court justices has broken down, because it seems to me in every one of these impasses, I hear about a new rule that supposedly exists from each party. So right now, you are stressing this idea of 60 votes being critical, of a precedent being there. I have heard Mitch McConnell try to defend what the Republicans did last year by saying, hey, look, there's a tradition of not considering Supreme Court nominees in election years. What it seems like when you add all of these together is we're just moving closer and closer to a place where, hey, if your party doesn't control the Senate, you're out of luck. You're not getting your nominees through.
Well, I think what we have to do is, again, try to maintain the standards as best we can. And it's very clear the standard for a Supreme Court nominee is 60 votes. That's the standard President Obama operated under. He was able to get two extremely well-qualified individuals on the court with Republican votes as well as Democratic votes. And again, I think the notion last year wasn't just we're not going to do it because it's election year. I mean, there was a refusal to even sit down and talk to Judge Garland to make an assessment of his skills and his abilities. And again, I think those excuses aren't pertinent now. We're talking about making sure that we can fully examine, fully review this individual, make a judgment about his abilities, his capabilities to serve on the United States Supreme Court, and then following the tradition and rules of the Senate, have a decisive 60 votes to get on to the final vote.
All right, Senator Jack Reed, Democrat from Rhode Island. Thank you for joining us. Appreciate it.